What's up, big dogs or cats, whatever your favorite animal is? Welcome back to your favorite podcast, The Boys, with your host, Epic Boy Lettuce.
With your boy Ethan Gochas.
For today's topic, we are going to discuss the documentary, The Case Against Adnan Syed, specifically Season 1, Episode 1, and the book, Adnan's Story, The Search for Truth and Justice After Syria. Both mediums allow listeners to understand the case of Adnan Syed and Heyman Lee, particularly Adnan's ethical background and how his relationship status can lead to a biased case and for a biased person to see Adnan in another light, diminishing the advantage for equality. At the end of the day, both the documentary and the book show how powerful systematic bias can be in criminal cases. By using a credible testimony and logical reasoning, the creators push audiences to question whether Adnan was investigated fairly from the start, or whether assumptions about his relationship, ethnicity, and background caused investigators to focus on him early. Together, the two media reveal how bias within systems like law enforcement and the court can shape an entire case and ultimately affect whether the justice system is truly fair.
Alrighty, chat. Welcome back. Ethan Gochas in the room, giving y'all the what, letting y'all determine the why. After researching some articles based on Anand's court case, we noticed some specific quotations being used to establish that Anand was a well-liked and respectful person who was unfairly judged simply based on the stereotype because he was from Pakistan. The government stereotyping people based on their race, that's high-key kind of shocking, am I right? For instance, when the article states they only went for Anand because he was Muslim, for context, the author just described Anand as a well-liked and respectful dude. This makes no sense. Which is why the community was so shocked when they heard his case. Obviously they had his back. Who would expect Anand to do something like this, especially after the impressions he implemented? But the court's argument was even craziest. I'll give you guys a moment to guess. Any ideas? Hold on, because you guys won't believe this. They used previous cases from another young Pakistani man from years ago to declare that Anand was guilty. Completely biased, if you ask me. I can guarantee you guys, if Anand was American, he would still been fighting his case. In the book it states, it argues that there was a pattern of Pakistani men killing their partners and then fleeing the country. This serves as a clear example of how court system stereotyping Anand because of his beliefs. The court used examples that there were no way related to him. Just because of his appearance, they decided to convict him without proper evidence.
Alrighty, boys and girls, let's make some noise for Big Lettuce. No? Okay, well, I guess we should get right into it. We will be discussing how the show, The Case Against Adnan Syed, Season 1, Episode 1, shows both how and why systemic bias can affect the outcome of court cases. The documentary uses both ethos and logos through expert testimony, in addition to analogy and comparison to reveal how systemic bias can influence criminal investigations. In this case, we will explore a specific instance during the show in which a clear systemic bias is evident. First, let's think about the two most important individuals in our case before the investigation, Adnan Syed and Heyman Lee. They were high school lovers and spent all their time together. But one day, after Heyman Lee went missing, it was obvious something was wrong. Detective Daryl Macy explains how, during the 72-hour window after the victim is found, I will say there wasn't any particular person of interest. I think the trend and the culture of everybody believing the husband did it, the boyfriend did it. If you get in that narrow path of thinking, you can only hurt yourself in an investigation. The important piece of this quote is not the evidence provided, or the specific examples, but the official law enforcing detectives basing their case on trends and cultures. Now, of course, hypothetically speaking, if your E-kitten was killed, will you A, blame the family, B, blame the friends, or C, blame the ex-boyfriend? Well, can I get a drum roll, please? Hello? Well, I'm gonna say it anyway. The answer will be C, alright? And of course, once again, this is exactly what detectives used to accuse and prosecute Adnan in this case. Additionally, the documentary uses both ethos and logos to reveal how systemic bias can influence criminal investigations. Through Detective Daryl Macy's testimony, the filmmakers established ethos by allowing the audience to hear criticism of investigative practices directly from a law enforcement officer. At the same time, detectives' explanation of how investigations often follow the assumption that the boyfriend did it appeals to logos by logically explaining how narrowing subjects too early can damage an investigation and lead to confirmation of bias. By organizing the episode around this, a clear sign of questionable reasoning is set. As professional and credible as some of these detectives and officers may be, they all believed it was right for them to point fingers at his man, only because of his past relationship. That's crazy, isn't it? They wanted to keep the case going and needed a lead to go off of. But again, just like the detective said, if you get in that narrow path of thinking, you can only hurt yourself in the investigation. And that is exactly what happened in that court case. But most importantly, for Mr. Adnan Syed. Overall, when the boy staff heard news of this case, we knew some kind of bias was going to be taking place, whether it be because of ethnicity or relationship status. It is very common for individuals of Arabic or Pakistani background to be falsely accused of wrongdoing just because of a trend, a culture, a religion, or ethnicity. Unfortunately for Dan, this just had to be the case for him as well. Due to systemic bias stemming from common trends and culture, Adnan's connection to the victim made it a lot easier for various systems like the court, police, and jury to already believe one side did it. And as we all know, unfortunately, it led to Adnan's arrest and continuing sentence of life in prison.
Ethan Gochez back at it again. So, all around, due to Adnan's ethnicity and social background, we saw how systematic biases can prevent a person from receiving a fair trial. This was clearly highlighted in the book, where the articles and documents show how Adnan's court case was not only based on previous conviction connected to race, but they were also immediately pointed fingers at Adnan because of his cultural background and ethnicity. Now, let me ask you this. How would you feel if you were falsely accused of a crime you didn't do, just because of your ethnicity or previous relationships? It would feel terrible, wouldn't it? To think how Adnan would feel continuing his life in prison, knowing that the rest of the world most likely believes that he committed the murder of Haim and Lee. Isn't that just sad?